On a December night in 1987, more people died on one ferry than aboard the Titanic 75 years earlier. Almost nobody outside the Philippines has ever heard its name, even though it remains the deadliest peacetime disaster at sea in history. This is the story of the Doña Paz, a ferry built for 1,500 people, carrying nearly 3 times that many home for Christmas. Built in Japan in 1963, the small ferry Himeyuri Maru carried just 600 passengers along the coast. Sold to a Philippine company in the 70s, it was renamed, burned, rebuilt, and renamed again, the Doña Paz. After the fire, the interior was rebuilt for capacity, not comfort. Open berths, replacing cabins, packing in more people. By 1987, the Doña Paz was licensed to carry roughly 1,500 people, including its crew, on the run to Manila. 3 days before Christmas, the ship left Tacloban at dawn, bound for Manila, with a stop at Catbalogan. Captain Eusebio Nazareno commanded the ferry that week, overseeing a route he had sailed many times before during the busy holiday season. Every seat, every stairwell, every inch of deck was worth more than its ticket price that week. Everyone was heading home. Tickets were sold on board, in cash, right up until departure, a normal practice on this route and never recorded on any list. By the time the ferry left Catbalogan that afternoon, the ship carried far more people than its paperwork would ever show anyone. Estimates place the true number aboard near 4,000, nearly 3 times the ship's rated capacity, sailing into open water. As night fell over the Tablas Strait, most passengers settled into sleep, unaware of what was approaching from the opposite direction. The vessel closing in from the darkness was not another ferry. It was a small tanker hauling gasoline through the same crowded strait. The tanker's name was Vector, chartered to carry fuel for a major oil company between 2 smaller Philippine ports, far from Manila. Investigators later found the tanker's operating license had expired months before it was ever allowed back on the water. No qualified master was on the bridge that night, and no lookout stood watch, even as the tanker crossed a busy shipping lane. A former captain of the tanker later said its steering was so worn out it took 2 crew members just to hold it straight. The tanker was carrying over 1 million liters of gasoline that night, cargo that turned it into a floating source of fire. 2 ships shared one stretch of water, one packed with sleeping families, the other loaded with fuel to burn for hours. Neither crew saw the danger in time. By 10:30 that night, the 2 courses had already crossed paths in the dark strait. At 10:30 at night, the 2 hulls came together in the Tablas Strait, while most passengers on the ferry were already asleep. The impact tore open the tanker's hull, and its gasoline ignited almost instantly, throwing flame across the water in seconds. Survivors described the sea itself catching fire, flames spreading faster than anyone trapped nearby could swim. Passengers woke to smoke and fire spreading through the ship's narrow stairwells, with almost no time to reach the upper deck safely. Life jacket lockers on the ferry were found locked that night, leaving most passengers with nothing to keep them afloat in the water. Below decks, the captain's cabin sat quiet. Officers reportedly relaxed, distracted, unaware how close the danger had come. Passengers jumped from the burning ferry into open water, swimming through debris and flame, some clinging to suitcases to stay afloat. The ferry sank within about 2 hours of the collision. The tanker followed roughly 2 hours after that, both vanishing beneath dark water. A passing ship's crew spotted the explosion from a distance and reached the first survivors roughly an hour after the two ships collided. It took 8 hours before Philippine authorities even learned a ship had gone down, far from any radio or Coast Guard station. 8 more hours passed before rescue ships reached the strait, 16 hours between the collision and organized help arriving. By the time search boats arrived, the water around the wreck was already crowded with sharks, drawn in by the wreckage and blood. Rescue crews worked to recover bodies while contending with the sharks, a grim complication in an already difficult search. In the end, only a small fraction of the bodies were ever recovered from the water, leaving most families without any remains at all. The scale of the fire and the delay in rescue meant most of what happened that night was never fully documented by anyone. What remained afterward was not a clear record, but a mystery. Nobody could say for certain how many people had actually been lost. The Philippine government's official death toll was set at 1,565 people, a figure built from official records. The ferry company's own passenger count from that week was even lower, listing just 1,493 people aboard. But the most widely cited estimate tells a very different story, built from thousands of claims filed by grieving families afterward. That estimate puts the real death toll above 4,300 people, nearly 3 times the government's official figure combined. The gap exists because thousands of passengers were never written down anywhere before the ship left port that morning. Only 24 confirmed survivors were ever pulled from that water, out of a ship that may have carried 4,000 people. 14-year-old Valeriana Duma was among the few who lived, one of the youngest survivors pulled from the burning water that night. Her survival became one of the only individual stories to emerge from a disaster too vast for most victims to ever be named. Almost all of the ferry's 58 crew members died that night, including the captain who had commanded the route for years. 2 crew members survived from the tanker's crew of 13, the only people to walk away from that ship at all. To this day, no government report, court case, or company record has ever produced one single agreed number for the dead. That uncertainty is not a footnote to this story. It is the story and the reason it is remembered the way it is. Philippine courts ultimately placed the blame for the collision on the tanker, not on the ferry company that packed thousands aboard unlisted. The ferry company was never found liable for the deaths, despite packing a ship built for 1,500 with thousands more people. The very next year, the same company lost another ship to a typhoon, killing more than 250 additional passengers at sea. A decade later, another of the company's ships went down near Manila Bay, killing more than 70 passengers in a single night. 2 decades after that, under a different name, the same company lost yet another ship, killing more than 800 people again. 4 disasters over 4 decades, all traced back to the same company, and not one of them changed how it was allowed to operate. Still, the disaster pushed the Philippines to tighten inspections and adopt stricter international safety standards for its ferries. It took the deadliest peacetime disaster in maritime history to convince a country's regulators that overcrowded ferries were a problem worth solving. Every disaster in this collection had a warning someone ignored, a valve, a slope, a coal seam, a manifest. We will keep finding those warnings, one overlooked signal at a time, because the people who lived through them deserve to be remembered.